Chapter 7 My Dumb Obsessions. There's two quotes here. It can be really exasperating to look back at your past. What's the matter with you? I want to ask her, my younger self, shaking her shoulder. If I did that, she would probably cry. Maybe I would cry too. Elif Batuman, The Idiot. Oh, we have that book. There are very few human beings who receive the truth, complete and staggering, by instant illumination. Most of them acquire it fragment by fragment on a small scale, by successive developments, cellularly, like a laborious mosaic. Anais Nin, The Diary of Anais Nin, Volume 3. I blame it all on the Miami sound machine. It's the summer of 1986, and The Words Get in the Way is playing in heavy rotation on Power 95. Gloria Estefan sings about being unable to articulate her complicated feelings for the man who's leaving her, and I'm equally unable to say why this adult contemporary pop song affects me so much. I am only 7 years old. I take the song off the radio and, sprawled on my bedroom carpet, I put my ears up close to the boombox and transcribe the lyrics onto a little red notepad. I don't believe she knows you like I do, I write. Your temperamental, moody side, the one you always tried to hide from me. Surely I have no grasp of what these words actually mean, but it doesn't matter. I still relate. I want to take Gloria's pain and make it mine. Overwrought ballads bring me so much happiness. I fast forward through Tiffany's I Think We're Alone Now, so I can get straight to Could Have Been, the torchiest song ever sung by a girl who performed for tweens in America's malls. When I'm 9, I invoke my other favorite mall maven. I have just hastily broken up with my 10-year-old boyfriend, and as I decide to top my original impulsive decision with another more elaborate one. I bring my beloved boombox to school. During recess, I tell my puzzled ex to listen closely to the song I've selected to blast from the speakers. Debbie Gibson's Foolish Beat. I could never love again the way I loved you. I pull this stunt a whole year before Say Anything comes out in theaters and John Cusack normalizes creepy boombox wielding as an acceptable romantic gesture. I'm a trendsetter. Alas, Eric is too busy playing on the jungle gym to pay much attention to the song lyrics. Our relationship may be done, but I'm just getting started. I love this small taste of what a tumultuous love life might feel like. From then on, I aspire to be the star of my own breakup cliché montage. To sit on a couch in filthy pajamas, surrounded by empty ice cream tubs and snot-filled tissues and whiskey bottles. To cry with abandon on the streets and have screaming matches on the phone with a man who evoked too much passion in me to be reasonable. To forsake bathing entirely and to fling myself around dramatically. Too overwhelmed by emotion to bother with cleanliness or balance. Having romantic drama, I think, might make me feel like I'm the main character of my own life. Until I can find the one whom I will very happily fight with and cry at the same time. I will spend my time looking, plotting, with the hope that one of my crushes might reciprocate enough so that we can become obsessed with each other in a way that is unhealthy and that takes over my life entirely. In college, I have a crisis that involves fingering. To anyone who wasn't around in the 1990s, the previous sentence might sound shocking, but fingering was just the name of a program in Telnet that told you which computers your crush was using and in which building on campus, simply by typing finger along with their university email address. Glorious. I finger a wide and diverse array of classmates, but I favor a few in particular. Multiple times a day, I check in on them, feeling a tickle of frisson if they are anywhere nearby. But then I learned that some enterprising engineering students have invented a program for reverse fingering, and I stop abruptly. I suggest you take my word on what that term means because Googling will take you on an entirely different journey. Every single person whom I've ever fingered knew that I had fingered them and how voraciously I had fingered them, and might have also been able to see who had fingered me, but it's only the shame that still lingers. As mortifying as the infamous reverse fingering incident of '98 is, I still go about ranking my crushes, fantasizing about them, my body releasing all kinds of hormones when I pass them on the street. I go to the library in the evening, get a Carol, and instead of opening a textbook, I make lists of top 10 or top 5 crushes and play elaborate games of Would You Rather with myself. At midnight, the rest of the library closes and only the bottom floor remains open for a late night studiers for late night studiers who trickled downstairs carrying overstuffed JanSports and lukewarm large coffees. There, consolidated into one big group, most of us would use the pretense of studying to check one another out. On a good night, my number one and number two infatuations would be studying, quote unquote, nearby. And irony. I managed to get A's in almost all my classes, even though, despite all my hard work, I uniformly failed to make an impression on any of my crushes. Another quote. My poor body, my precious body, how had I let her be treated this way? My body was me. To hate my own body was to suffer from an autoimmune disease of the mind. Melissa Phoebos, Girlhood. In the years before college, I spent an inordinate amount of time running around a track going nowhere, riding a bike and going nowhere, climbing upstairs and going nowhere. I rust out the Stairmaster on my parents' basement while watching General Hospital. My reward is a raspberry and cream flavored fat-free Haagen-Dazs pop. In 2022, I would read reporter Heather Radke's cultural history of the rear end, aptly titled Butts, and I would see my teenage self in the author's depiction of why she so desperately wanted to attain buns of steel, the name of a popular workout video at the time. I regularly told myself that the incantations at the heart of the neoliberal myth of exercise, that I lacked discipline, that I was lazy, that my life would be better if I was thinner. Nothing is scarier to me than the idea of people perceiving me as lazy, even though literally no one except my internal straw man is saying that I am. When I'm 16 years old, I hate the way I look. I buy into Bootstrap's theory of diet and exercise. I truly believe that I can transcend my genetics if only I try hard enough. I'm so good at trying. And with a perfect body, I would be able to transcend all my other concerns. A fail-proof plan. The 1990s is a particularly easy time to have an obsession with one's body. That decade, even perfectly proportioned supermodels are too fat to pull off the look of the moment. Heroin chic is in, and looking as though you eat enough and get a good night's sleep to care about your health is passé. It is also the era of the food pyramid, a shorthand for a government-approved restrictive diet that works under the assumption that any kind of fat is inherently bad. Bad for the body, and bad morally for anyone who wants to take care of their body. For so long, we've lived in a culture where fat was the enemy, but never before had we received a USDA-sanctioned chart to put in our fridges that laid it out so clearly. Consuming fat is bad, almost as bad as being fat. I studied all those so-called health magazines as if they are textbooks, taking dieting tips from publications like Self and Men's Health, only learning much later, upon listening to the podcast Maintenance Phase, tagline, debunking the junk science behind health fads, wellness scams, and nonsensical nutrition advice, that so many of the studies cited in these diet stories were at best inconclusive, at worst had been funded by a company that stood to gain from the particular findings. Meanwhile, my mother, always willing to do the hard work involved to make my life as carefree as possible, fills our kitchen with a cornucopia of fat-free products: American cheese, skim milk, Snackwells, Entenmann's low-fat pound cake, barbecue-flavored baked Lay's potato chips. Dinner is fruit salad, plain pasta with vegetables, a fat-free roll with a fat-free margarine to flavor it, and a big salad, no dressing. Dessert is a no-sugar added fat-free TCBY, don't know what that is, in exotic flavors like Dutch apple or white chocolate macadamia nut. Later, my mom mail orders these special no-sugar added fat-free cake slices that I can microwave for a few seconds to try to make them a little bit moist. Slap a dollop of fat-free Cool Whip on top, and then ritually eat while we watch Melrose Place. Cool Whip still tastes like love to me. What I didn't know at the time was that my mostly fat-free diet was hell on my blood sugar, requiring at least an hour of cardio every day to counteract all the simple carbs I was consuming. So exercise became paramount to me, both for diabetes management and for looking hot. I couldn't wait until school was over so I could change my clothes in the bathroom and run to the gym, feeling relief only once I'd started to sweat. And there was a tremendous guilt that I felt every time I had to skip my usual workout. A delightful intersection of regular diabetes issues and teenage girl food issues. How fun. I'm so mad that I still remember this moment, but I do. It's my senior prom after party. a school-sponsored event to prevent students from running off after prom and getting bombed at the beach. So instead we have a magician and dancing and other age-appropriate shit. And then they serve pizza at midnight. Reader, what I most prominently remember about prom is that I ate pizza with real cheese for the first time in years. I had missed it so much, and it was so delicious, and it's all I can think about for the rest of the evening. And here I am describing it to you 25 years later. To consume pizza like a normal person and still have room in my head to think about anything else at all would be progress. How could I get there? There's some relief by the time I get to college in the late 1990s, because nutritional experts and overlords have gone in an entirely different direction. By then, carbs are officially out. Fruit is a crime, and bread is even worse. Eating pizza is now bad for crust reasons, not cheese reasons. But at least I can skip a day on the treadmill every now and then, and my blood sugar won't suffer for it that much. Another quote. She was in love with the idea of intelligence, and she overestimated her own. Mary Gateskill, Bad Behavior. I don't sign up for any women's studies courses in college because I figure I'm just as good as all my male classmates. I don't need separate classes to explore how we're different or how we're treated differently. We aren't treated differently. In the late 1990s, we are living in the glory of post-feminism. There is no work left to do. In short, I knew absolutely nothing. Even in college, I still tend to get most of my information from magazines, from broadcast TV, from the canon of literature I read in my English class, and from late-night drunken conversations with other dumbasses who think that they know it all. Which is why my world bursts open when my roommate hands me a copy of Naomi Wolf's debut work of cultural criticism. The Beauty Myth remains one of the most formative books of my life, and I'm grateful to have read it when I did because it made me question my surroundings in a way that no other book has done. It felt revolutionary for me to lie in my extra long twin bed and consider that my disordered eating and my exercise addiction and my constant feelings of inadequacy about my physical appearance were holding me back in ways I hadn't even considered. My good grades and my ambitions had done nothing to shield me from the torment I felt when I looked in the mirror. I was basic. I was exhausted. I was angry. Wolf articulated the feeling that roiled in my belly alongside that unfulfilling banquet of fat-free foods. Dieting is the most potent political sedative in women's history. A quietly mad population is a tractable one, she wrote. If Wolf's book felt trite and inadequately argued to anyone paying attention, in parentheses, even by the standards of pop culture feminist studies, The Beauty Myth is a mess, but that doesn't mean it's wrong, wrote Karen James in a 1991 New York Times article. Then I decidedly hadn't been. I felt empowered. Even Wolf's later descent from shoddy researcher to full-blown right-wing conspiracy theorist, again in parentheses, in 2021, she was suspended from Twitter for spreading anti-vaccination propaganda. Hasn't lessened the importance of her early work for me because The Beauty Myth opened me up to a whole new way of thinking. So here I am, smug that I am on the road to releasing myself of oppressive body issues, free from diet culture in my brain, if not my body. It's my first taste of how a simple book might begin to liberate me from the fragilest chains of the patriarchy. I have so much more reading to do. Another quote. Unrequited love, plain, desperate, above-board boy chasing. Turned you into a salesperson, and what you were selling was something he didn't want, couldn't use, would never miss. Elizabeth McCracken, The Giant's House. More than anything, I want to be worthy of love under my new semi-non-body hating paradigm. I trade fixating on food for fixating on boys, focusing less on diet and exercise section of my favorite women's magazines, and going straight to quizzes with titles like, Who is your real soulmate? And Is he boyfriend material? I live on my young adulthood as if I'm a character in one of the Jane Austen novels I read in my 19th century British lit seminar, deep in my own personal marriage plot. And just as Austen's eligible young ladies could divert their attention from all the political and economic upheavals that took place in the background of her novels, so could I blithely go about my personal dramas without bothering to stop and look around the wider world. If love proved elusive, then heartache, at least, is easily accessible as always. Someone doesn't like me as much as I like them, and suddenly I'm engulfed in an all-encompassing, wonderful turmoil. It requires special skill to take any minor rejection and turn it into a Greek tragedy, but I have always been gifted and talented. I have entire mixtapes devoted to some dude I went on 2 dates with and who then never called me again. Delighted to equate my own insignificant dilemma with the big feelings of Fiona Apple and Liz Phair. At the college bar karaoke night, I'd sung a ballad, Angel of the Morning is a favorite, that's meant for one oblivious patron in the crowd who would absolutely not get the subtext. I'm concocting a whole psychodrama, and he probably won't even get the main text. Too busy chatting with his friends or ordering another beer, or worse, hitting on someone else entirely. Later, in the grand tradition of angsty white women who find solace in books, I would see myself in Sylvia Plath's journals. There is so much hurt in this game of searching for a mate, of testing, trying, and you realize suddenly that you forgot it was a game and turn away in tears. No one cares what happens in the marriage plot novel after the happy ending. Once the obstacles are overcome and the declarations of love have been made, the heroine is presumed to live out a life in blissful quietude. I prefer contemporary novels that don't resolve with a great big bow at the end. Show me the messy, the weird, the uglier, the better. Which is why I'm terribly sorry to report that after I met Josh, my life got better in myriad ways. But one way in particular, I was no longer weighed down by romantic dreams. How silly I felt for wasting so much time when I had been lucky enough all along to have the time and resources to do and to learn and to read and to see. What a deeply unserious, entitled, feminine way to be oppressed, to have the means and energy to do great things, but to waste so many chances I'd been given. I want to tell you that I've spent the rest of my life learning and doing and seeing beyond myself. But even though I was no longer doing close readings of every potentially amorous text in DM, using the skills I'd picked up in 19th century British lit, I found new ways to be very much preoccupied with myself. I filled much extra room in my brain with much more garbage. Anti-aging creams, how many gray hairs is too many to have on my head, on my eyebrows, hair density serums, that one expensive exfoliant that everyone swears really makes them look younger. Another quote. Ideas come to us as the successors to griefs, and griefs, at the moment when they change into ideas, lose some part of their power to injure the heart. Deborah Levy, The Cost of Living, a working autobiography. I'm as self-hating as ever, but happily married for 5 years by the time I interviewed Elif Batuman for my literary podcast in 2022. I loved her previous novel, The Idiot, partly because its heroine, her mind equal parts brilliance and utter stupidity, made me feel seen. Selin was also a college freshman in the late 90s who had a terrible fingering problem. And you can bet that when Elif and I were in a conversation at Books Are Magic in Brooklyn in 2018, when the paperback of The Idiot was published, we spent some time reminiscing about that short era when email location was physically traceable. Either Or is a sequel to The Idiot that finds Selin in her sophomore year, still fingering away, horny as ever, but more likely to do something about it this time. There is plenty of deep, unsensual sex in the sequel. But in the first pages, she's still very much consumed by Ivan, the object of her obsession in the first book. This is like spoilers for me. What we call love is so specific. We have this idea that it's natural. It's the birds and the bees, Elif says, when I mention how being consumed by the idea of someone can feel a lot like love at that age. I just remember how lost I felt, how much I wanted and needed, and I had no idea how to get it. And love becomes this very appealing filter to see things through, or bucket to put things in. I don't even know which reductive metaphor to use. She laughs. It becomes a kind of ideology. Imagine me, still woefully underread in feminist theory to this day, having this conversation about a novel and getting as close to having a cartoon light bulb turn on in my little bubble above my head as I'd ever been. Part of what I wanted to do in the sequel to The Idiot was unpack how I arrived at all of the different assumptions I'd made, Elif tells me. I was thinking of how much of behavior we think as being natural or as universal is actually some super specific thing that some guy made up for some reason, which is really political realization. In her research for Either Or, Elif told me that she read the works of second wave feminists that she'd never gotten around to, going back to rethink a lot of the assumptions she made about her sexuality as a young woman. Shulamith Firestone talks about romance and love the same way that, as a way that women are depoliticized, Elif tells me, referring to Firestone's work, The Dialectic of Sex, the Case for Feminist Revolution. It's something that wastes their time and keeps them out of the political sphere and tied up with problems that are private and thus not political. That's another thing I want to explore in Either Or, she explains. The way these girls' thoughts are subsumed with these guys who really aren't doing anything wrong, they're just doing the role that they're doing. But the girls have a completely different experience and they lose their whole brain space. I want to believe I'm much more savvy than I was half a lifetime ago, but it still floored me to ponder that it never occurred to me that what I had considered to be a personal failing was a systemic problem that plenty of thinkers before me had identified and examined. I had been stuck in the same trap I was back before I read The Beauty Myth, being so self-centered in a particularly feminized way that I forgot to look beyond myself and question why I was the way that I was. This knowledge does not bring enlightenment. I have not spent the last few years studying neuroscience or ancient Greek. My heart will likely never catch up with my brain when it comes to understand the political and social context behind why I feel the way I feel. Over the years, I've cultivated so many different ways to hate myself. It still hurts. It will always hurt. But then what? Another quote. Only by learning to live in harmony with your contradictions can you keep it all afloat. Audre Lorde, Sister Outsider. Here's what I know for sure. I still love all the songs from my mixtapes, even though it's better to sing karaoke about heartache rather than to live it. I still struggle with what I see when I look in the mirror, but understanding the context from which my body image issues arise makes me feel less lonely. Literally, there are so many of us out there. And I also know that there is great joy in discovering writers who can articulate some of the feelings that I've been circling, but had been unable to put in words. There is comfort in other people's stories, to learn that I am not the only one aching to move past my own petty concerns. Long after I declined to take an intro-level women's studies course, There is Feminism, the kind that makes me feel less alone with all the stupid shit that runs through my head. There is art, so much of which engages with those seemingly useless fixations. There is solace in finding myself in books, and it is through them that I can begin to envision what a better world might look like. This is why I read novels, so I can escape my own unrelenting monologue. Carol Shields.